Good morning and welcome to the Senior Hour, which is sponsored by Comfort Keepers in Home Care and Advanced Audiology. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host Dr. Jean Dorio on your hometown station AM 1220 KHTS. This is a show for, about, and by seniors, giving information to enhance one's quality of life. And our guest this morning, speaking about quality of life, is Randall Caden, who is an elder law attorney. And welcome, sir. How are you again?
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Yes, good to have you here.
And I thought today we would talk about some frequently asked questions. You know, almost every single week I get asked certain questions over and over and over again. And I almost feel like I should have a recording that I can give people because it's always the same answer. You know?
Yeah.
And so I thought we'd go through that, and then maybe as we go along, you guys will have some questions, and we can answer those questions too. And then furthermore, if anybody out there wants to call in with some questions, you know, that's fine too. Happy to answer any questions that anyone has out there. Okay? So, one of the first points that I'd like to discuss is what is the difference between estate planning and elder law? I get this question all the time. Not only do I get this question from consumers, kind of surprisingly, I get this question from professionals, and not just accountants or financial planners and attorneys. Quite frankly, I get this question from estate planning attorneys, which is a little bit shocking, but it also is very revealing because it tells me how little of the people out there truly understand what is elder law. Okay, and so I always answer the question with a question because I find that is the best way to understand the differences between estate planning and elder law. So when we're talking about estate planning, what we're really doing is we're asking the question of what happens when I die, okay? Mm-hmm. And it's more likened to creating a last will and testament. It's very important since we all know that we're going to pass away one day. We need to outline what will happen in that situation. Now, elder law also asks and answers that question, but in addition to that, with elder law, we're really asking the question, what happens if I live? And I live and I live. And there's all sorts of issues that affect seniors in the elder law arena that are not addressed by estate planning. So, for example, estate planning is the very last sliver of issues that we're dealing with in the elder law world. Estate planning, of course, will have ancillary documents such as a financial power of attorney or healthcare directive, and it can prevent a conservatorship proceeding. That's if you're incapacitated. But again, mostly really death issues and sometimes incapacity issues. Elder law, on the other hand, people will come into our office, for example, and they may be 70 years old, and we could be talking about a 30-year or more time frame of issues that affect seniors. And really those issues surround four main areas. The first area is healthcare. The second area is housing. The third area is financial issues, and the fourth area is the legal issues. So it's sometimes surprising to folks out there that when we're talking about legal issues in elder law, and specifically life care planning, really the legal issues, they're a major consideration, but they're just one small sliver of what it is that we're handling. So all sorts of issues affect people. You know, how can I live in the house in a healthy manner if I'm not living in the home? Where should I be living? Where do I want to be living? Where can I afford to live? What's it going to cost me? What are the financial issues? Am I going to be able to handle the financial issues? Will I have to go to my family and ask for help one way or the other? How am I not going to become a burden on my family? And how do I really get the best care possible in the least restrictive environment? And then after this, and these issues, by the way, are, to me, eclipse the estate planning issues. But only after we've addressed all these issues do we then focus on the who gets what part of a will or trust, and deal with all those death time issues. So I wish I had $1 frankly, for every client that's come into my office with a great estate plan. They figured they had their Social Security, their Medicare, maybe they've got a supplement, and they thought they were completely covered. And first of all, they learned that they are not completely covered. It doesn't cover long-term care issues, number one. And number two is that, it's usually after the fact. It could be by, for example, a loved one, a child comes into the office and they say, Mom, or let's say Mom and Dad, don't really have the capacity to do this kind of planning, but I am their agent under their financial power of attorney, and I'm also their trustee under their trust, or their successor trustee. And so can't I just go ahead and do what it is that you're talking about, what needs to be done in order for us to put this planning in place, to get the best benefits out there available for them? And oftentimes, I'd say most of the time, my answer is, I'm sorry, the answer is no, because that estate planning power of attorney, all it does is it allows you to step into the shoes of your parent to act on their behalf and in their best interests, which in the estate planning world completely makes sense. But when we're talking about elder law and we want to qualify for public benefits like veterans benefits or Medi-Cal, we need that power of attorney to actually say, in this situation where we're going to be going after public benefits, I give my agent the authority to divest me of my assets to do something like set up an asset protection trust so that I can go ahead and qualify for these benefits, that me and my spouse can live in the best possible way for the rest of our lives. And again, we could be talking about 30 plus years. And then again, when a person passes away, we're of course addressing the estate planning issues, but that's secondary. We're more concerned with our seniors. If we are able to have a big inheritance for the kids, then that's wonderful. But before that, we really want to make sure that our seniors are living the way that they want to live. Okay, so that's the first frequently asked question that I would say I get almost every single week.
So what about, our listeners are trying to figure out a direction to go, and these two the question arises, the difference between them, but they kind of go hand in hand to a certain degree, but do you think one comes before the other, and that the patient or the individual or the family member should first seek help in elder law and then estate planning, or combine them together as they go through all of this?
Yes, such a great question, really. So I believe that estate planning is important almost for everybody, okay? But I distinguish between estate planning for seniors and estate planning for younger families. And it depends on what phase of life that you are in. If you have a young family, for example, you're probably going to be most concerned about if something happens to you and your partner, what will happen to your children? Who's going to be their guardian? How is the money going to come out for the benefit of those children? What's going to be in place? Are you going to have what I've created, which is called a guardian angel trust, which actually protects the children in different ways and treats them equally as if you were alive? It's what we call parenting from the grave. And
wow,
then,
that's interesting.
Yeah, and then if we're talking about, let's say, couples that are more around the age of in their 50s, their estate plans are completely different again, because now we're focused less on the kids, because usually the kids tend to be grown at that point, or at least they're well on their way. And we're focused more on asset preservation techniques and maybe long-term care insurance and really looking out for one another. And then when we get to be around 65 or 70, again, everything totally switches. And I would say that, in my opinion, everybody who's any senior out there is much more benefited by seeking the advice of an elder law attorney versus a straight estate planning attorney. So to give you an idea, there is crossover, but it works like this. If you find 100 estate planning attorneys, one of them will practice elder law. So in other words, and if you find 100 elder law attorneys, let me finish that thought. If you find 100 elder law attorneys, 100% of them practice estate planning.
Right.
So all elder law attorneys know and deal day in and day out with the estate planning issues, but the elder law issues, which are much bigger and last much longer, only elder law attorneys handle. So that's why I oftentimes say that people out there, seniors especially, get lulled into a sense of security because they think that they've created an estate plan, and almost all the time, invariably, I am talking to clients and I'm pointing out to them, you know that your trust does this and it doesn't do that, and the same with your powers of attorney, and have you considered doing it this way instead? Because if you set it up this way, look at all these other things that we can do, which you can't currently get done under your current estate plan. That plan is what we term to be just a simple probate avoidance trust. And it's great to avoid probate because it's it's very costly, time consuming and such, and we don't want to go through probate in California. So I think estate planning is very important for everybody, don't get me wrong. But again, when we're talking about the elder law issues, we're addressing the estate planning issues, but we're way more focused on the healthcare, the housing, and the financial issues, and how to make sure that that senior lives the way they want to live. And as you'll see a little bit later, when we talk about financial elder abuse and these kinds of things, we'll really realize that it's frankly, seniors are scared. There's a lot of wrongdoers out there. I call them predators.
That's right.
And even in the situation where they're not necessarily affected by predators, there's a lot of fear out there going on with other issues, and that's maybe a foreshadowing of our fourth frequently asked question here.
Yeah.
Well,
So, but go ahead.
I think it's fear of the unknown,
Yes.
because as a senior myself, we have a living trust, which I've spoken to you about, that we need to go through and make some significant changes because we had it done 15 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, so you actually fit our prototypical client in the sense that even if you weren't concerned about elder law issues at all, you still need to completely redo your estate plan because invariably, if you did it 15 years ago, you have an AB trust set up. And as we talked about the last time I was on the show, you're looking at a lot of expenses and work after the death of the first spouse that is completely unnecessary if you just get rid of those AB provisions and use KISS theory, keep it simple and just have it available to the surviving spouse without having to set up those sub-trusts.
So some of our listeners are saying we're using the term senior, we're using the term elder.
Yeah.
But in reality, preparations for getting everything into place start a lot earlier. And the question is, what are in the continuity of life, what do we look at? What do we say should set our mind into thinking we need to start taking care of it? Is it when our children have graduated college and moved out of the house? Is it when we're getting toward retirement? There's no exact time when you should start in these preparations, but obviously, if we're saying elder, I mean, there are listeners that saying, I'm not elderly, I'm not a senior. And you don't want them to think that by seeing an elder law attorney that they're admitting that. You want them to realize that there's a time that they need to start working toward putting things into place so that they can be taken care of. And as Barb said, things were arranged 15 years ago. And yeah, everything I think should be looked at probably on a yearly basis to assure they're up to date. But the question is, when do you start? And I think it's much earlier than the connotation of elder or senior implies.
Yeah, so first of all, you see me smiling over here because, Gene, it's almost like you read my mind. That really gets into my second frequently asked question. And why don't we just dive into that second question? Because the other question that I get is, what is the elder law continuum? And most people have never heard of this. And so I actually brought in a chart. Of course, our listeners can't see it, but you two can see it here.
Absolutely.
And this is what we call the elder law continuum. And we have 4 facets here: health and ability to function, housing, the cost of care, and the public benefits and available resources. And it's all lined up pretty perfectly, okay? In the sense that if you look at the first line and you ask the question, well, you know, somebody might say, I'm not an elder, or, okay, I might be a senior, but I'm stronger than my kids. I mean, actually, I think of my own father, who's 75, I think he's stronger than my brother and I. It's pretty amazing. And so he would say, you know, if I look at this chart right here, he would say, I have no functional limits. I don't need to do any planning at all. But that's not true, actually. And if you look at that first line again, if we're talking about my own mother, for example, she falls somewhere in the middle there. She has limited function. And so this chart really helps people to understand that it's not necessarily age-based. It's based on how you're doing in the community. And I ask clients often, and I show them this chart, and I say, you know, where do you think you fit on this continuum? And Barbara, maybe you could tell me, you know, for you and your husband, where do you think you guys fit on this continuum of health and ability to function?
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle. Okay. So what that tells me is if I just go down the middle of this chart here, we see that housing, you're really on the cusp of needing to think about housing. Okay, because it might not be possible to remain at home functionally much longer. And we're looking, if we look at the line before that, down below that rather, we see the cost of care is right, it's really going up at that point, okay? And so, and then again on the bottom line of public benefits and available resources, we're looking at the different tools we have out there that can help you and your husband to remain at home or to live the life that you want to live. Now, again, it's not an age-based question necessarily.
No, it isn't.
Yeah, and so my grandmother, who's 96, who runs up and down the stairs, clearly she's doing better than my mother, who's 75, who's like I just said, she's kind of in the middle of this elder care continuum. My grandmother has no functional limits whatsoever. You know, she lives in a continuing care retirement community, but she's got no functional limits. So it's very interesting. Here we have a person who's 96 who's doing better than her daughter who's 75. And so, you know, it's really...
I think I just saw your grandmother run by the window of our studio.
It could be.
She was trucking. We need to take a break, but you know, this is a great engaging conversation that I think our listeners have to, and they should be calling in if they have questions, but you know, just to hear what we're talking about, you know, these are an aspect of life that I will tell you our seniors do not think about. So let's get back to Randall Caden here in a few moments on your hometown station AM 1220 KHTS.